Welcome back to the channel, everyone. I'm thrilled to have you here for another captivating tale that will tug at your heartstrings and keep you on the edge of your seat. Today's story is one of love, betrayal, and the quest for self-discovery. It's titled I Went to the Movies and Found a Toddler Watching a Horror Film. What happened next was unbelievable. Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now without further ado, let's go. I went to the movies last night to watch Halloween Ends on opening night. I had just gotten off work and was still in my suit, but I said screw it because I was too lazy to go home and change into more casual clothes and then drive to the movies. I sat down in my seat with my snacks, and during the previews I saw a toddler come into the theater that didn't look old enough for kindergarten yet accompanied by a kid who looked to be in middle school, and then their mother comes into the theater right behind them, and I saw the mother was holding her third kid, an actual baby who couldn't have been older than 1 year at best. They sit down in the row seats directly below me. The way a theater is built has each row of seats consisting of luxury recliners with walls facing them separating them from the next row down. I couldn't actually see this mother and her kids unless I got out of my seat, stood up to look down on the row at them, or unless they were just entering the theater to sit down. At that point my brain is just screaming. Are you serious right now? Like, are you really serious with this? You're going to bring a baby and a toddler into a horror movie? Not just any horror movie, mind you, but the horror movie of one of the most terrifying slasher icons, Michael Myers. To say I was already very annoyed that this mother's decision-making was an understatement, because she's not only going to cause her baby and toddler to get seriously scared by bringing them here, but I guess that she also wouldn't be doing anything to calm them down if one or the other started crying or being too loud during the movie. Lo and behold, I was right. Multiple times throughout the first half of the movie the baby started briefly crying or letting out a single loud bitch cry. It was loud enough that you could obviously hear it interrupt the sounds and dialogue of the movie. I was already mad at the woman for her garbage decision making and entitled behavior by bringing in children that shouldn't have been there and were all but guaranteed to interrupt the movie for everyone else. But her not doing anything to quiet them down was the final straw. And just to clarify for everyone who may ask, this mother did not get up even once to take her baby outside a theater to calm it down. This baby was consistently loud and disruptive the whole time the family was there. I got out of the seat and walked out of the theater to a couple of employees outside of that particular theater and explained the situation. They said they would contact their manager to come into the theater and get the woman and her kids to leave. I go back into the theater, and before long 15 or 20 minutes have passed with no sight of the manager or employees in the theater. During that time period the baby is still loudly whining and crying here and there, once again stopping me from really enjoying the movie. At that point the movie hadn't reached its bloody gory climax, but I was going to wait around until then or afterwards for this to get addressed and risk the chance of that baby and slasher toddler to get scared out of their minds and ruin it for me and everyone else. I got up again and went to talk to the employees again, and that's when they finally got their manager to go into the theater and talk to the woman to get her and her kids to leave. I stood off to the side by the giant hole when you enter the theater watching the movie as a manager and an employee talked with the mother, so I never got to see what actually happened or what was said. The mother and her 2 younglings had already interrupted the movie enough for me, and I wasn't going to miss another second by focusing on them about to get kicked out. A little over 5 minutes later the employee came back by me and said they are about to leave the theater. I saw the mother carrying her baby followed by her middle school aged child and the toddler carrying her sippy cup leaving the movie theater. I and everyone else finally got to watch the rest of the movie in peace, which was about another 40 to 45 minutes and just so happened to be the best part of the movie. After the movie was over I found the manager that kicked the mother and her kids out to thank her for fixing the problem. She told me it was no big deal and that actually legally the mother should have never been allowed to see that movie in the first place. According to the theater's policy, children under 6 old cannot enter R-rated movies after 6 p.m. So the mother shouldn't have been allowed to buy tickets in the first place, considering she had a toddler and a baby was her. However, the employee that sold her the tickets was being trained and didn't know about that policy yet, so he mistakenly sold her the tickets. The manager told me that because of that the mother was entitled to a refund of her movie tickets, which I understood it didn't matter in the end though as a toddler and the baby didn't see the goriest and scariest parts of the movie nor did the best part of the movie get ruined for me and everyone else in that theater. So to start, I love my dogs. I have 2 dogs that I frequently take out for walks even during the pandemic. Both are rescues and have gone through way more hard stuff than I did. I decided to take Josephine, the oldest, out for a walk since Millie, the youngest, is fast asleep. We took the route we usually take when we go out for walks. I then noticed that there is a new donut shop that opened. The donuts looked nice and delicious, so I decided to grab some. Only thing is no dogs are allowed to go inside. But the owners were nice to leave a spot outside for dogs. It had a bowl full of water as well, so I put Josephine outside. I was inside for like 5 minutes or something since there were like 3 people already there. I was just browsing through Reddit, then I heard my dog scream, then I saw this lady smacking my dog with her umbrella at full force numerous times. I quickly rush outside and say, "What are you doing, lady?" I then took away Josephine, but she still tried to smack her. She even hit me in the leg a couple times. I kid you not, these are the exact words that came out of this lady's mouth. "Your dog scratched my car." Her car was across the street, by the way, far away from Josephine. She went to this friend and said that I let my dog wander outside without a leash and that she had to chain my dog after she scratched her car. I don't know if you've been following the story, but I chained my dog way before this lady started hitting her. I was legitimately confused. I immediately called the cops and the cops arrived while she was still ranting, and then I had to pay for her car with my insurance. I'm 15 by the way, and I don't know anything about this insurance thing, so the cops intervened and tried to calm the situation down. The lady then decided to play the victim and said that my dog viciously attacked her. My dog did attack her since she was getting hit with an umbrella by a person. She didn't know. The cops pulled her to the side and let her tell her side of the story. I think I heard stuff like my dog scratched her car and attacked her and that she bravely chained my dog. Cops did the same to me, then pulled me to the side and I got to tell my side of the story. They then asked the shop owner if they could see the cameras outside the shop while I was tending my dog, check in for any wounds. I saw the cops handcuff the lady after they were done watching the footage and forcefully shoved her in the car because she was resisting arrest. She then threatened to sue me for harassment while screaming profanities. 3 days later. No one sued me yet. My dog and I are fine, but she was whimpering all throughout the situation. Sadly, she got traumatized. She's still recovering and we're now doing well. A little update: I was gonna sue her for animal abuse and later found out that she was already in jail for insurance fraud and assault. I don't know about the insurance fraud part, but she apparently tried to push her coworker out of a window, at least that's what I heard, which isn't assault but attempted murder anyway. I didn't continue with the charges because she's serving 5 years in prison now. I would try to sue her and try to extend her sentence, but I don't want to go through a whole process just to make someone's life a lot more miserable. People have lost that last bit of sanity during these troubling times. Okay, so I smoke cigars, mostly cheap factory rejects. But an occasional good one too. I do not smoke in my house or around other people, as I know a very select group of people enjoy that particular aroma. Another point to note here is I drive my youngest to and from school, seeing as the weather in my neck of the woods is bipolar at best. So sitting yesterday afternoon, I parked way outside the school zone in a line to pick up kids, probably a block away in a residential neighborhood. I drive a big truck with a loud exhaust system. The players are me, Karen, and the school principal. I'm in a line of vehicles, engine off, listening to a good book on Audible, smoking the last bit of a good cigar. For those who don't know, a cigar can be sit down and refreshed if need be also. I never smoke on school grounds and always have it out before my kid gets in a truck. It's my truck and no one else drives it, so I don't mind the smell of tobacco, and I have a bottle of Febreze that I use every couple of days anyway. About 5 minutes later, I see a woman gets out of her car and begin to approach me. I watched her walk up past the 2 vehicles behind me and heading my way. She's got a typical Karen look: hair, clothes, way too much makeup, and the light. She comes up right on my window and just stands there looking at me. I rolled my window down all the way and asked her if she needed anything, and the dialogue was as follows: "What do you think you're doing?" "Excuse me?" "You're smoking the pot." "Yes." She called it the pot on school grounds. "You should be ashamed of yourself. What are you talking about?" "I can see it in your hand and smell it." "Well, obviously you can't smell it because this is a cigar." "I don't think so." I am calling the police. Knock yourself out, you weirdo. After her brain short circuits from being talked to like that, she tried to open my door, which was locked. Then she reached in my window and tried to grab the cigar out of my mouth. Now life has taught us all from a young very age that fire is hot and things that burn from fire are also hot, but physics never seemed to be on the forefront of these jerks. So she immediately burned her hand on the cigar and jumped back screaming that I did that on purpose. I started laughing because it was funny. She then tried the door again and I obliged by opening it as hard as I could, which knocked her back onto her back, which made me laugh even more. You jerk, I'm going to report you for assault. I'm going to get you and your kid kicked out of here. Yeah, whatever, Karen, go back to your car before you have a heart attack. She walked back to her car, all the while yelling obscenities. I made sure to keep an eye on her in my rear view until we got closer to the school. Now the school principal is always outside directing traffic between the parents and school buses. He and I know each other because being in a northern state, but being fans of the U of Miami is not something you see a lot up here, so we've talked about football and other stuff about the school. So he knows me a little, and my truck is unique in size, color, and exhaust. As I'm waiting to pull up to the place where you pick up your kid, I see Karen park, get out, and head directly towards the principal. She made sure to walk by me and give me dirty looks like I guess that was supposed to intimidate me or something. Spoiler alert, it didn't. She gave the principal an earful, couldn't quite hear what she said, but made sure to be as dramatic as possible, probably telling him I'm a drug addict and a monster and all. That principal is doing his best to direct traffic and put up with her nonsense. And I assume said something to placate her because she walked away all smug and again made sure to walk by me so I could see her big grin. I smiled back and waved at her sassily. I pulled up and my kid got in, and as I figured he would, the principal came over to me. Did you really put a plant of pot out on her hand and slam your door into her head? He asked me. That's so stupid. I don't even know where to start. First she reached into my vehicle and tried to get the cigar out of my mouth, and she burned her own hand like the dummy she is. Second, she tried to open my door not once but twice, so I applied to her the second time. Third, if I opened the door as hard as I could into her head, she'd be knocked out on the road if she got bruised along with her ego. That's just tough crap, I guess. The principal sighs voluptuously and says, that's about what I thought happened. Just do me a favor and don't retaliate. Okay. I don't need another headache. No worries from me, man, just here to pick up the kid. Go Canes. My kid put up the U symbol as we drove away, and that's it. I'll be picking up the kid later today again, so hopefully there is no repeat to that nonsense. Karen will be so thrilled to know that I didn't get the outcome she thought I would. After telling the principal, at least she got what she deserves and had her hands burned in her but falling to the floor. I mean, that's what happens when you don't mind your own business. When my father moved from Ohio to Sacramento in the 1950s, he initially had 6 roommates, 2 per room, so they could keep things as affordable as possible. In the fall, the residents would rake their leaves into large piles in the gutter/side of the street. The city would send out vacuum trucks and collect the leaves on specific prearranged days, while some kids thought it was great fun to drive their car through the big piles of leaves and scatter them everywhere. My father and his roommates would then have to scramble to take everything back into a pile, or the city would not vacuum up the unorganized leaves. After about 3 weeks of this, one of his roommates, who worked graveyard shift as a mechanic at the municipal bus yard, was tired of screwing around with the leaves. After a long night of work, without telling the other roommates, when he left for work, he dropped an engine plug off his truck and covered it in a big pile of leaves at around 2 a.m. There was a horrific crash that woke up all the neighbors. Fortunately, the kids in the car were not beat up too badly, since the car was not only going about 15 miles per hour upon impact. It turns out the kid who was driving was the son of a police officer. When the cops contacted his father, he asked if his son was injured. When he was told he was fine, his father told the cops to let him walk home and not under any circumstances were they to give any of the kids a ride home. That must have been a long cold walk. In the morning, when the roommate returned from his shift, he came into the house and said something like, "You never know why you're going to catch when you go fishing." I interpreted the story as a warning that screwing with people might be funny the first few times. More than 2 times the same joke is no longer funny. For context, I'm a 17-year-old male working for my local McDonald's in a Midwestern USA, and this happened last night. We have a regular, the Karen in the story, who always come through our drive-thru and orders 2 large iced teas and a large Colombian coffee. In case you aren't familiar, some McDonald's stores sell a Colombian brew coffee, which has a much stronger flavor, way more of a kick to it, just as bitter as a Karen's soul. How fitting. Whenever there is an order for 3 or more drinks, we assume that they will want a drink tray because it makes things work better and quicker for us. However, Karen does not want to drink tray. In fact, you think she's allergic to them. If you try to give her one, she snaps at you and tries to boss you around. My coworker, who I will call Jemima, didn't know about her aversion to drink trays because she normally works different shifts and had never dealt with her before. She handed her drinks out on a tray and Karen took the drink tray and threw it at her, pressed it right back into the window. Jemima was shaking naturally and told the manager what happened last night. Karen came through the drive-thru again. And this time Jemima was at the first window where you pay for your food. She got a manager, and not just any manager, or general manager, who is the highest person on the ladder in our store. The next level is a regional manager who takes care of the 8 stores owned by our franchise. He happened to be right there and he knew what happened. He sold Karen her coffees, but only after making it clear that she was not allowed to come back after what she did. If she comes back, not only will we ban her from all 8 stores, all the McDonald's stores in our area are owned by the same family, so she will almost certainly have to drive at least 40 minutes or something to get to a McDonald's. She's allowed to go to, but we will also call the cops on her for trespassing. She got to my window and said, "I don't want to drink tray," and I just said I know that, as sassily as my thoroughly not sassy personality would allow. Update: she came back today. The official policy about what to do about her hadn't gotten around to all of the managers yet. But one of the managers there tonight sent the GM a message letting him know she came by, hopefully by the next time she comes back. Everybody knows about it and we can call the authorities on a Karen. Thank you for watching and see you next time. If you enjoyed this story, please show your support by hitting the like button. Your engagement means the world to me and helps keep the stories coming. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you never miss out on future tales filled with unexpected twists and turns. Subscribing not only keeps you in the loop but also supports me in my quest to bring you more captivating stories. So, take a moment to like and subscribe. Thank you again for your support and stay tuned for more incredible journeys. Until next time, keep believing in the power of stories to transform. And hey there, storytellers! Welcome back to our channel, where we dive deep into the captivating tales that unfold in the intricate web of human relationships. Today, I have a story that will leave you on the edge of your seat, filled with betrayal, revenge, and unexpected twists. The title of today's tale is Caught My Husband Cheating on His Birthday. His reaction will shock you. Prepare yourselves for a roller coaster of emotions as we delve into the shocking events that unfolded when Wendy returned home early from a business trip, only to discover her husband's deceit. But before we dive into the story, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe to our channel, and ring the notification bell so you never miss out on our latest storytelling adventures. Now, let's jump right into the drama. I had returned home from business trip earlier than planned, and I had the all-too-natural idea of surprising my husband with my return and with a nice dinner. I hid myself in the living room closet, trying not to laugh out loud with excitement from seeing him all surprised and happy to see me, when the front door finally opened and I could hear his voice. But then, I also heard a woman's voice that I didn't recognize, and in a few moments, I saw them come into the living room together, arm in arm. My husband was with another woman, a stranger to me. At that moment, I realized that everything was a lie, and what was going to be a surprise became revenge. I was never going to forgive him, and he was going to pay well for his actions. How could he betray me, his own wife? Prepare yourself, darling, for what might be your last few seconds of precious life. My name is Wendy, and I'm a 32-year-old office woman. After graduating from college, I got a job at a major company that manages gardening equipment, and since then, I've been working hard as a career woman with a potentially bright future ahead of her. Up until about a year ago, I only cared about my working life and my personal success as a working member of society, but a year ago, I met Landon, my future husband. We met through a mutual friend, who invited the two of us to a small drinking party at a nice tavern downtown, and he worked in another smaller company. We hit it off, and after 17 months of being a couple, we got married, and we lived a happy life together as a working couple. My husband works for a small business in agricultural machines, and he never works overtime, and I don't work overtime either, and I also came home earlier than he did, so whenever I did, I would often wait for him after I cooked something for dinner. It was hard to do housework after work, but my husband worked hard in a physically demanding job, and my determination to cheer up with a meal was pretty impressive, so I didn't really mind doing the housework. As long as Landon could rest at home, nice and peaceful, when he was tired, that was good enough for me. A part of me also wanted him to think that I was a good wife for him, so, in my own way, I was doing my best at home too. Then, one day, it was decided that I was going to go on a long-term business trip. This business trip was related to an impending promotion of mine, and I was very excited. I even thought that this business trip would decide the fate of my career, if not my life itself. But during the trip, Landon would be alone in the house. He's a grown man who can take care of himself like it was a walk in the park, so there wasn't any need to worry. But one thing you should know about my husband, he is a catastrophically poor cook, and he's never done a day's housework in his life. Up until we got married, he was living in his parents' home, and everything was taken by my mother-in-law, Mrs. Bratz. Landon can't even do his own laundry, but, nowadays, in this advanced society, we have delivery service for meals, and there's a laundromat a short walk away from where we lived for laundry. I was sure he could manage. And while I was on my business trip, my husband was going to celebrate his 34th birthday. We used to spend his birthday together, but because of this stupid business trip, we couldn't spend it together this time. Landon, honey, we won't be able to celebrate your birthday together this year. I'm so sorry. Oh, Wendy, darling, it's okay. It can't be helped in this case. You have work to do. But good luck with your work, darling. I've always loved you because you always try to do your best. We'll do something to celebrate it again when you come back. How's that? That idea sounds awesome. Thanks so much. And I'm really sorry. I'll do my best as always. With some kind words from my husband, I got even more determined to do great, and I headed out on my business trip. While I was away, I was very busy. Work often lasted until after I usually went home. This made it difficult for me to find enough time to call my husband or have a real-time conversation over text messages. I did call him every once in a while, and by that I mean a couple of days, but when I could reach him, perhaps he was busy at the moment because he never answered the phone. I couldn't get in touch with him other than messages, and it just wasn't the same. I missed him, but Landon had sent me off with his great words of encouragement, so I focused on working hard to land that big promotion. My hard work paid off in the end, because I finished a little bit early, and that meant that I could go home from my business trip a few days earlier than scheduled. I was so happy. I was able to come home on my husband's birthday, even though I told him I couldn't make it because of this business trip. I had the all-too-natural idea of surprising my husband with my return, and with a nice dinner on the day of his birthday. The plan was that I would leave work early on his birthday, and bring home Chinese food and a nice birthday cake for him, and the wallet he wanted as a present. I had it all ready. I could only imagine how happy he would be to see me back home on his birthday. Just envisioning the look of surprise and excitement he would surely have on his face made me so eager to hurry up and get home. I arrived home long before he always did. That night would probably be the same as always. He would be home by 6 p.m. To surprise him, I hid in the living room closet. But even after 6 p.m., he still wasn't home. I wondered if it might be because he was celebrating his birthday with a bunch of his colleagues, and as I slowly began to be convinced that's what he was doing, I felt grateful for his friends. But I still wanted to see the look of surprise and excitement on Landon's face. So I didn't call it a night, even when it was after 6:30 p.m. I remained in the closet and waited for the familiar hum of his car. I was pretty tired from my long and tedious business trip where I spent an ungodly amount of time in front of papers and computer screens, and before I knew it, I was fast asleep. I only realized I was when I woke up a few hours later from the sound of a rumbling car engine. I opened the closet door slightly, and through the window, I saw the signal lights of the car scintillating. My husband had come home at last. I quietly closed the closet door and waited for him for another few minutes. I heard the front door open, and the familiar sound of Landon's business shoes echoed through the house. I had a good time today. Thank you for the delicious dinner. It was delicious, wasn't it? It was nice to spend your birthday with you, sweetie. Why in the goddamn world of ignorant bliss did I hear a woman's voice? One that I didn't recognize, in any case. And that sounded suspiciously young. I was so upset, but I tried not to make a sound in the closet. Seriously, I can't believe how happy a simple business trip could make me. I feel like every day I get to spend with you, Clara. I'm undoubtedly the happiest man in the world. It's actually insane how great I feel right now. Thank you, sweetie. I love spending time with you too. I can't help but feel sorry for your wife, but I always tell myself that it can't be helped. It's okay, darling. I'm only married to her for her money. You're the only woman I've ever loved. Am I really? Are you seriously only married to her because she's got bags of money stashed away? I know it'd be so hard for me when I discover my own loving husband says things like that about me. There's nothing good about her except for her money, literally the only thing she has going for her. And they got ridiculously excited as they piled on the bad things about me. I was shell-shocked, but unknowing of my presence in the room, they went on talking shit about me, laughing all the while. I always have an amazing time with you, Clara, but if I imagine that I only had a relationship with that hag, it's like suffocating me. It's a real nightmare. Then you're lucky I'm here. I'll say this again. I never loved Wendy. I love you so much, and I'm going to do what we can to be together, okay? Then they went to take a bath. I took advantage of the opportunity and left the house quietly. Maybe the better option would have been to interrogate the two slimy traitors right then and there, but the shock at what I'd witnessed was just too overwhelming. It was extremely difficult to prevent myself from hyperventilating and screaming in sorrow. I couldn't face the reality just yet. I needed time to gather my senses first. I booked a hotel room nearby and stayed there that night. As I was trudging towards the hotel, my emotions got the better of me, and I suddenly started to cry. I sat down on a bench in a small park, ripped open the box that contained Lana's birthday cake, forced my fingers around a large clump of dessert, and stuffed it in my mouth. The cream tasted very sweet, and somehow my tears, which were streaming into my mouth at this point, added a nice little tang at the beginning of each bite. From the point of view of passerbys, I was basically a woman dressed in office uniform, stuffing a ridiculous amount of birthday cake into my mouth, crying all the while, and getting cream in every nook and cranny of my face. I definitely looked a suspicious person, but during that time of personal crisis, what people thought of me was the least of my problems, and I couldn't care less. After crying a legitimate rainstorm, my sadness towards the situation gradually transformed into anger towards my husband. I don't mean to say that he owes me something, but no one can deny I've done so much for him. I cooked for him, did the housework for him, all because he couldn't do shit around the house, and when he told me there was something he wanted, I went and actually something nice for him. I got him a birthday present that cost thousands of dollars, and he was still willing to cast me aside as an ATM machine and never accept me as the one he chose to spend the rest of his life with. Call me a money grubber, will you? Well, that doesn't come for free, my dearest. I threw the wallet I'd bought for his birthday as hard as I could into a nearby trash can. You've got some nerve to cheat on your wife while she's away on a business trip, my dearest, I muttered to myself as I left the park. On the way to the hotel, I decided to get a divorce, but I knew he would only be pleased if I divorced my husband. I decided to really make him suffer for his crimes before divorcing him. For a while thereafter, I continued to stay at the hotel. I was supposed to go back home next week, so until then, I can't go home. But I did actually stop by my house on the way, and the fact that I found Landon's car was strange, very strange indeed. At this time of night, he's supposed to be at work still. I called his company posing as a client and asked the receptionist at the other end of the phone, "Excuse me, is Mr. Landon Brass present at this hour?" "I'm sorry, ma'am, but it seems Mr. Brass has taken a vacation for about a week." "Oh, is that so? Thank you for telling me. So my husband is on vacation for a week." That led me to wonder if the woman whom he was having an affair with worked for the same company. I checked. "Well then, is there someone by the name of Clara?" "I'm so sorry, ma'am, it seems Miss McIntyre is also on vacation for about a week." "Is there anything you need to inform us about? If it's urgent, I can put someone else on the phone to assist you." "No, it's not urgent. Thank you so much. Have a nice day, sir." After I said that, I hung up. I found out that my husband was having an affair with one of his coworkers. I was so sick of his stupid bullshit I wanted to throw up. I couldn't comprehend the fact that I used to love Landon Brass. Now, I feel nothing but contempt, disgust, and fury. I stayed out of the house for a while, checking on them both from a distance. After perhaps an hour or so, I saw them having inappropriate physical contact as they exited the house. They got into Landon's car and drove off somewhere. They were each carrying a large suitcase, so naturally, I assumed the two snakes were going on a trip, taking an entire week off from work just to go on a vacation of adultery. What a couple of carefree jellyfishes. I made sure my husband was out of the house completely before I went inside. I decided to take all of my valuables and all the things I needed and leave the house, never to return to live again. After I was sure I had packed everything, I made one last check of the house, which was in fact a kind of formal goodbye to the building. I loved that house. It was perfect for both of us to have a nice and peaceful time to rest after a hard day's work, and the backyard was absolutely beautiful. Landon and I were going to build a life together, and the first step was buying this house with most of what we'd saved up. It was not a new house by any means, but considering the fact that I was going to live in it with the person I loved, it was the best house I could have asked for. But now, I was living in it with a traitor, and I didn't feel comfortable at all. My biggest desire was to leave that house as quickly as I could, but my old love for this house made me linger for another few minutes. I took a walk around the inside. I discovered a lot of the woman's belongings, Clara's belongings. I became positive that while I was away on my business trip, they were indeed planning on living together in their cheesy, unfaithful excuse of passion. Assorted lotions, shampoos, conditioners, and items of makeup that weren't mine lined the nightstand in Landon's bedroom. His closet lodged her clothes, anything ranging from casual jeans and sweaters, to beautiful dresses, to inappropriately tiny blouses. The room had a fruity smell to it, and I later found out why. Landon's old bedsheets, which were now nowhere to be found, had been thrown away, probably, and replaced with new, orange-scented ones. When I saw all this, I was beyond angry. I was utterly mortified. I wondered what all the time we had spent meant exactly. Which had we been trying to build up the whole time? I left the house, and first went straight to a trusted lawyer, who helped me prepare for the divorce, and then I went to a detective agency to gather evidence against the affair. When I went to the house the second time, I probably should have taken pictures of the evidence, but I felt like if I took pictures with my phone, the scene would burn itself into my mind in the worst way possible, and I didn't like it. Additionally, I couldn't stay in the hotel forever, so I rented an apartment that could accommodate a tenant for a month at a time. That's where I put all the stuff I had packed and taken away with me when I left the house. I had to find a new, bigger, better place to live. By this time, I had already made up my mind on getting a divorce, and nothing was going to change my mind. I no longer had any love for Landon Brass, and he was dead to me, but something told me it wasn't enough. Of all the pain he had caused me, I have to pay him back with pain tenfold. Otherwise, my gut would never be satisfied, nor would it ever forgive me for backing out. As I went about my work as usual, I waited for a call from the detective agency, and I got a phone call from at what was quite possibly the best time ever. They said they had accumulated enough evidence, which was excellent news. I asked them to keep that evidence in a secure place while I went back to my husband's house. There was a car parked outside, so I knew he must have returned from his trip of adultery. After I confirmed he was inside the house, I headed to the cake shop and bought a cake before I went back to my husband's house. I unlocked the door, and I quietly entered the building. I made sure he was not in the living room, and then proceeded to approach his bedroom door. As I got ever closer, I could hear my husband and the woman known as Clara McIntyre, whom he was having an affair with, inside. I held up the box that contained the cake, opened it up quietly, took out the dessert, set the box aside in the corridor, and burst into the room. "Happy birthday to you! Happy birthday to you!" My voice startled them both, and their faces expressed the purest shock I'd ever seen. It was priceless, and I wanted to laugh, but keeping a straight face here and going through with the plan was key. Ignoring their ridiculous faces, I kept on singing. "Happy birthday, dear traitor, happy birthday to you." Once I finished singing, I threw the entire cake at my husband as hard and as accurately as I could. The dessert landed with a satisfying splat all over his naked upper body, and some of the cream flew into the naked woman as well. "Hey! What the frick are you doing, Wendy? What the frick am I doing? Well, look who's talking. And what do you think you're doing, eh? Well, I mean... Wait, I didn't know you were home already. Why the hell didn't you call me? Why didn't I call you? Listen, buddy, I'm about to clue you in on the truth here. I was already here on your birthday. I hope I didn't say anything more to help you understand. Oh my God, there's no way." My husband's mouth started to spasm, and his darling lover must have been more speechless than he. Her mouth gaped open, and gave me the impression she physically couldn't get it shut. "I think you just stole my frickin' line, Mr. Brass. There's no way I'm seeing any of this right now. Could you explain to what exactly it is you're doing?" "Well, this is, what does you know about this place, madam? This is my house, you know." Well. Perhaps my sudden intrusion really did the job to leave them catatonic. They were visibly upset, and they were not answering any of my questions. I'm only a money grubber, after all, and this lady is the only one you love, right? Well, I have just the remedy for that. From now on, you will pay me back all the money that you stole from me. I'm going to demand alimony from you, and you better pay me back every single penny you owe me." No sooner had I uttered the word alimony than my husband gasped, and then I looked at the woman whom he was having an affair with. She was shaking. "Well, don't just stay there where you are, in that uncomfortable position. Get down on the floor, on your knees. I'm sure you'll feel a lot better that way." The moment I told her so, they both rushed off the bed, kneeled before me, and bowed their heads towards the floor. "I'm sorry, I was having a little bit of fun with her. Since you were away working, I missed you, and the loneliness was getting to me. Yes, that's all true. I have a husband myself, but he never pays any attention to me, and I was in desperate need of someone who appreciated my company." "Exactly, and we were actually talking about ending things right when you barged in, Wendy. We were just saying goodbye to each other." Yes, we were. We both agreed it wasn't good for the ones we chose to marry originally. We literally just broke up, Wendy. Cheaters, liars, backstabbing traitors. I'm pretty sure all of these things describe the same two people. Let's see who can guess the right answer. I heard you two outside earlier, loud and clear. Bullshit, you were talking about ending things. What you were really talking about was taking a 2-week trip to Japan next. You've got to be kidding me. How do two people stoop to such low humanity, damn it? That's what I said, and both he and the woman went deathly pale, indicating I hit the nail on the head. You guys are such assholes. I already mentioned I heard you guys talking shit about me the night of this bastard's birthday. With me having this much knowledge about what you think about my frickin' existence, you really think I'm gonna whatever horseshit excuse your bird brains come up with? I'm sorry. I admit that I cheated on you, and I deeply apologize. I hope you can forgive me. Just because you act all responsible and innocent right now, doesn't mean you're any closer to being forgiven. I'm sorry, I really am. I really do believe that what I did was wrong. Divorce me. Now. Please, please don't say such things, Wendy. Really, it was just for fun. Ma'am, on behalf of Landon, I'm begging you, don't divorce him. Please. The name's Clara, right? Who are you to talk to on behalf of Landon Brass? Don't you dare forget that you're eligible for paying me alimony too, eh? But, I was just having an affair. It's not like we were married, Landon and I. I don't think the law states that you can demand alimony from me because it was just fun and games. I don't believe this. Tell me what exactly is your IQ score? I'm just dying to know. Of course I can legally demand alimony from you. You knew the man whom you were with was married to another woman, and yet you went on with the affair, hoping to get something nice out of it. Newsflash, lady. Nothing nice comes out of unfaithfulness. I was so stunned that this woman was pretty much claiming that the Sun was basically the world's largest pizza in the entire state of Mexico. I couldn't believe I'd lost my actual husband to a woman with zero common sense. I want a divorce. I've already hired a lawyer, so if you want to know more about the demands, you'll hear about it from him. I've also been to the detective agency, and they acquired a lot of solid evidence of your stupid affair. If you're thinking of uttering excuses to get yourself out of this, don't freaking bother. It doesn't make any sense, for one thing. And second, you'd be digging your own grave. You can't be serious. I don't want a divorce. I don't want a divorce. You even said you didn't want to talk to me. Being around me was enough to get you disgusted enough to want to run the frick away from this place. I don't know how you expect us to live with ourselves as a married couple, now that the relationship is ruined. Oh wait, of course. I'm the money grubber, so you literally need me in order to survive, right? No, that's not it. Oh darling, it's a shame. Because this year, I actually got you that luxury brand wallet you've been wanting for quite some time. I had it. Ready for you. And I was gonna give it to you. Now, it's in the trash. No, there's no way maybe you should have stayed true to yourself. Goodbye. That's all I had to say, and I left them with their grief and shame, alone in the house. Thereafter, Mr. Brass tried calling me a few times, but I ignored them all. I left everything to my lawyer. Mr. Brass was later fired from his job, perhaps the fact that I went to the company where he and the woman whom he was having an affair with worked, and gave them an official letter from the detective agency that contained the evidence of their adultery. Nowadays, it isn't uncommon anymore to hear about people that cheated on their husbands or wives, and it's pretty much common knowledge right now that anyone who does engage in such crimes against humanity will lose credibility in the company, and in life in general. How in the world did Mr. Brass and Miss McIntyre not know anything about that? Mr. Brass was so dependent on me for living expenses, so I wouldn't be surprised if he never saved a penny. Now that he was fired, he pleaded to me through my lawyer to let him pay the alimony and monthly installments. I agreed, as long as he paid me in full. As for Miss McIntyre, she was fired from her job and was left without any money. Mr. McIntyre found out about the affair. I believe he's also demanding alimony. She tried to turn to Mr. Brass for help, but found no luck with him as he didn't have any savings whatsoever and was now working part-time. She decided she couldn't rely on him, and thus she betrayed him and replaced him with a man who seemed to be loaded with money. But that man turned out to be quite formidable because he didn't even work, and even though he's neck-deep in debt, he never failed to waste his money on stupid things like gambling and marijuana. Knowing that neither Mr. Brass nor Miss McIntyre are living happy lives after their affair was exposed makes me feel somewhat relieved. The irony is that now I know full well it's not good to take pleasure in other people's unhappiness. I got a big promotion after that long business trip I took, and I was praised as the first woman in the company's history to be promoted to that position at such a young age, 32. There are junior staff who admire me because of this achievement and makes me subconsciously put more time and effort into my work. It's a very good thing I love my work, and now I've set myself a new challenge. To be a good boss who sets a good example for my subordinates, to be a trusted employee of the company and contribute to bringing it to greatness, and to acquire what is needed to be promoted even further up in the ranks of the enterprise. Wish me luck, everyone! Thank you for sticking with us through this intense and emotional story. If you found it as compelling as we did, make sure to leave a comment below and share your thoughts. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to our channel for more incredible stories. Hit the notification bell so you're the first to know when we release a new video. Until next time, take care and remember, sometimes, the truth is more terrifying than the... Welcome back to the channel, where we dive into the most jaw-dropping tales of betrayal and payback. Today's story is one that will leave you on the edge of your seat. Imagine discovering that the two people you trust the most are hiding the darkest secret from you. What would you do? How far would you go to get even? Our story today is titled, Found Out My Best Friend and Boyfriend Were Having an Affair, Here's How I Got My Revenge. Let's get right into it. I never thought I'd be the girl to say this, but here I am, heart shattered, trust broken. It's funny, isn't it? How one moment can turn your entire world upside down. That moment for me? Finding those videos. God, even thinking about it makes my stomach twist. I was at Lara's, my supposed best friend since forever, celebrating her brother's 22nd birthday. The house was buzzing with people, laughter echoing off the walls, drinks flowing like there was no tomorrow. And me? I was floating through it all, tipsy and carefree, until I wasn't. Laura had disappeared outside, mingling or whatever, and I decided it was selfie time. Her phone was lying around, and we always shared everything, so I didn't even hesitate. A few goofy shots later, I had this brilliant idea to send them to myself, for memories. That's when everything changed. Typing in my name, I paused. Ethan's name popped up just below mine. Why? Why would my boyfriend and my best friend be texting? Curiosity morphed into suspicion, morphed into action. I clicked on his name, my heart racing, and that's when I saw them. For videos, thumbnails glaring back at me with a story I wasn't prepared to read. The first video was enough to burn every memory of us to ashes. Ethan, blindfolded, and Laura, very much not, in a way that screamed betrayal. They were intimate, to put it mildly. Each video escalated, their actions a stark contrast to the love and trust one thought we shared. I felt like I was outside my body, watching someone else's life implode. The room spun, my heart pounded, and I had to get out. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. I left the party without a word to anyone, especially not Laura. Ethan's been calling, voicemails piling up with him crying, begging for a chance to explain. But what's there to explain? The videos spoke volumes, volumes of lies and deceit. And Laura? She's been radio silent. Guilt, maybe? Or just indifference? Hard to tell with a backstabber. Now, I'm here, sitting in my room, replaying that night over and over. The betrayal by the two people I trusted most has left me reeling, unsure of how to move forward or if I even want to confront them. Part of me wants to scream, to make them feel a fraction of this pain, but another part wonders if silence is the best revenge. What do you do when your world crumbles? When the two people you loved and trusted the most leave you questioning everything? I guess I'm about to find out. The night was supposed to be simple. Can you give Laura a ride home? I asked Ethan, my voice muffled by the phone and the sounds of the bustling cafe where I worked. It was just a favor, nothing more. Ethan, always the charmer, agreed without a second thought. Of course, babe, no problem at all, he assured me, his voice a smooth balm to my frazzled nerves. Little did I know, that ride would mark the beginning of the end. I was pulling an all-nighter at the cafe, the kind of shift that leaves you questioning your life choices. Meanwhile, Laura was out, living it up at a graduation party. She'd been my rock since we were kids, but that night, she became something else entirely. When I finally got a break, my phone lit up with a message from Ethan. Lara's home safe. Heading back to our place now. Relief washed over me, quickly followed by exhaustion. I trusted Ethan implicitly, and Laura was like the sister I never had. It never crossed my mind to doubt either of them. But then, things started to shift. Lara's texts became more frequent, her questions about Ethan more pointed. How's Ethan doing? He's such a sweetheart for giving me a ride. Her words, innocent on the surface, began to carry a weight that I couldn't shake off. And Ethan? He just laughed it off, his usual easygoing self, oblivious to the storm brewing on the horizon. The first seeds of doubt were planted the next time we all hung out together. Laura, who was always more jeans and a t-shirt than anything else, showed up in a dress that left little to the imagination. She clung to Ethan's every word, laughing a little too loudly at his jokes, her eyes lingering on him a little too long. It was subtle, but undeniable. Something had shifted in the dynamics of our trio, and I found myself on the outside looking in. I tried to brush it off, to convince myself that I was reading too much into it. After all, they were just being friendly, right? But the nagging feeling in the pit of my stomach wouldn't go away. It was like watching a car crash in slow motion. You know what's coming, but you're powerless to stop it. Ethan? I found myself asking one night, the words slipping out before I could think better of it, is everything okay with you and Laura? His response was immediate, a perfect blend of confusion and concern. Of course, babe, why wouldn't it be? He pulled me close, his embrace meant to reassure, but the seeds of doubt had already taken root, growing with every passing day. As I lay in his arms that night, the silence between us spoke volumes. The affair might not have been out in the open yet, but the foundation of trust we'd built was starting to crumble. And with each passing moment, I felt myself slipping further away from the two people I loved most, caught in a web of betrayal that I never saw coming. The moment I thought about confronting them, my heart raced like it was trying to beat its way out of my chest. The idea alone felt like stepping off a cliff. Ethan and Laura, the two pillars of my world, suddenly seemed like strangers. Am I just being paranoid? I whispered to the empty room, half hoping for an answer that never came. Ethan's behavior didn't help, if anything, it only tangled my thoughts further. He was the same loving, attentive boyfriend he'd always been, maybe even more so. Flowers, just because. Surprise dinners, his warmth enveloping me in a way that almost made me forget the storm clouds gathering in my mind. Everything okay, Mia? His voice, laced with genuine concern, would pull me back from the edge every time I neared it. You've seemed a bit off lately. How could I tell him what was swirling in my head? That every laugh shared with Laura felt like a knife twisting in my back? And Laura, God, Laura. She crossed lines I didn't even know we had, her questions about Ethan veering from curious to invasive. How did Ethan react to that story you told him? He's got such a great laugh. Comments that once would have seemed innocuous now felt loaded, each one chipping away at my resolve. Their closeness was no longer a figment of my imagination. The way she sought him out, the energy between them, it was palpable, undeniable. Yet every time I steeled myself to confront them, to demand answers, I'd falter. Fear of shattering the fragile peace held me back, the peace that, deep down, I knew was already fractured. The tension became a constant companion, whispering doubts in my ear, painting my thoughts with suspicion. Mia, you're just overthinking things, I'd tell myself, trying to brush away the unease that clung to me like a second skin. But the harder I tried to ignore it, the louder it became. One evening, as I watched Ethan and Laura laughing together over something trivial, something inside me snapped. The laughter wasn't for me. I was on the outside looking in on a connection that had somehow shifted away from our trio, excluding me, isolating me. I needed to talk to someone, anyone who could offer perspective without the emotional turmoil clouding my judgment. My mom, always my sounding board, answered on the first ring. Honey, what's wrong? She asked, her voice a soothing balm. Pouring out my fears and observations felt like releasing a valve, the pressure within easing slightly as I spoke. Mia, listen to me, she said, her tone firm yet gentle. Trust your gut. But remember, accusations need solid ground. Observe, reflect, and then act. Don't let fear make decisions for you. Her words, wise as always, gave me pause. Was I ready to face the potential truth, or was the comfort of ignorance easier to bear? The answer, much like my heart at that moment, was fragmented. As days turned into weeks, the dance continued. Ethan's affection became my anchor, Lara's boldness the storm that threatened to pull me under. The confrontation loomed large, an inevitable crossroads I wasn't sure I had the strength to face. Yet, in the silence of the night, with only my thoughts for company, I realized something had to give. The truth, no matter how painful, was better than the limbo of doubt. I resolved to find my moment, to confront the storm head-on. Little did I know, the eye of that storm was closer than I ever imagined. The air was thick with celebration. Laughter weaving through the crowded backyard as I navigated my way through familiar faces, all gathered for Lara's brother's birthday bash. It was one of those nights where everything felt just right, or so I thought. Little did I know, my world was about to come crashing down in the most unexpected way. I remember feeling light, almost giddy, as I made my way inside Lara's house to escape the chill. The warmth of the interior hit me, a welcome embrace from the crisp night air. That's when I spotted Lara's phone, casually left on the kitchen counter among a clutter of party debris. A harmless idea struck me: why not take a few drunken selfies for laughs? We did it all the time, a silly tradition that never seemed to grow old. Flicking through the camera roll to find my latest series of goofy faces, I noticed the messaging app open in the background. An innocent glance turned into a curious peek, and that's when I saw Ethan's name, popping up in a way it had no right to. My heartbeat accelerated, a mix of confusion and a creeping dread taking hold as I tapped on his name, driven by a force I couldn't resist. The screen loaded, and suddenly, I wasn't in Lara's kitchen anymore. I was somewhere far off, a place where trust and love went to die. Videos, 4 of them, each a knife twisting deeper into my heart. My fingers trembled as I pressed play, each second unraveling the life I thought I knew. The first video was a blow I couldn't have prepared for. Ethan, my Ethan, with Laura in a way he was only supposed to be with me. Blindfolded, vulnerable, and completely unaware I would ever witness this. Their laughter, touches, the intimacy of their betrayal, it was all there, laid bare for my disbelieving eyes. I watched, frozen, as each video descended further into a nightmare. There they were, the two people I trusted most in the world, sharing moments meant for us, for me and Ethan. The realization hit me like a physical force, tears blurring my vision as the final video ended. The room spun around me, the sounds of the party outside a distant, mocking echo. I felt sick, heartbroken, and utterly betrayed. How? Why? Questions spiraled through my mind, but deep down, I knew the answers wouldn't change the raw, aching wound inside. I left the phone where it lay, a Pandora's box of shattered illusions. The urge to confront them, to scream and demand explanations, surged within me. Yet, my feet carried me away, out of Lara's house, away from the scene of my world's quiet collapse. The night air no longer felt crisp, it was cold, a chill that matched the sudden ice in my veins. As I walked, the images played on a loop in my mind, a cruel highlight reel of betrayal. Ethan's and Lara's laughter echoed in my ears, a soundtrack to the unraveling of my trust. I knew then, nothing would ever be the same. The unexpected twist in my story wasn't just a revelation, it was a turning point, a moment that redefined everything I thought I knew about love, friendship, and trust. The moment I stepped out of Lara's house, the cool night air felt like a slap to my face, a harsh contrast to the storm of emotions raging inside me. My phone buzzed incessantly, a relentless reminder of the reality I was desperately trying to escape. It was Ethan, of course. His name lit up my screen over and over, each call a stab of betrayal. I didn't need to hear his voice to know what he would say. The apologies, the explanations, the desperate pleas for understanding, they were all meaningless. How could words undo what I had seen? How could they stitch back together the trust that had been so carelessly ripped apart? I took a deep breath, the decision crystallizing in my mind with a cold, hard finality. Blocking them was almost cathartic, each button press a step towards severing the ties that bound me to the pain. Ethan, Laura, they were parts of my life that I needed to cut out, malignant growths that had hidden their toxicity until now. The walk home was a blur, my thoughts a tangled mess of anger, disbelief, and an overwhelming sense of loss. By the time I reached my apartment, my phone was flooded with voicemails from Ethan. Part of me, a very small part, wanted to listen, to let his words wash over me in a wave of self-torture. But I resisted, there was nothing he could say that would change the images burned into my memory. Ethan again, I muttered to myself, deleting another voicemail unheard. His desperation was palpable, even through the digital distance I had put between us. Mia, please, just let me explain. It's not what it looks like. I swear to you, I didn't know she was filming. Please, babe, we need to talk about this. His words, even unheard, were like echoes in my mind. Could it be true? Did it even matter? The betrayal wasn't just in the act caught on camera, it was in the lies, the secrecy, and the fact that it happened at all. The apartment felt empty, colder somehow, as if the shadows held whispers of the love and trust that had once filled its corners. I sank onto the couch, the silence oppressive, the solitude a stark reminder of the gaping hole Ethan and Lara's actions had torn in my life. In that moment, the urge to confront Ethan, to scream and cry and make him understand the depth of the pain he had caused, was overwhelming. But what would it achieve? The damage was done, the trust shattered beyond repair. No, this was a wound that words could not heal. The night dragged on, each tick of the clock a reminder of the agonizing limbo I found myself in. To confront or to retreat, to seek answers or to accept the painful truth without them. These were questions I couldn't answer, not yet. For now, the only thing I could do was navigate the immediate aftermath of the betrayal, one agonizing step at a time. As dawn crept through the curtains, casting a soft light on the remnants of a life I thought I knew, I realized that this was just the beginning. The road ahead was uncertain, fraught with pain and the daunting task of rebuilding myself from the ashes of my shattered trust. But it was a road I would have to walk, one way or another. The second the idea took root, it was like a wildfire in my veins, consuming the remnants of the hurt and betrayal with a fierce, unyielding intensity. I wasn't going to let them get away with it, not without facing the consequences of their actions. Direct confrontation? No. That would be too easy, too quick. They deserved more. They deserved to feel a fraction of the pain they'd inflicted on me. I spent the night plotting, my mind racing with possibilities until it clicked, the perfect form of revenge. Exposing them, letting everyone see them for who they really were, felt like the only way to strip them of the facade they'd so carefully constructed. The videos were damning evidence, impossible to deny or explain away. I worked methodically, my actions fueled by a cold, detached resolve. Creating anonymous email accounts felt like donning a mask, a necessary shield to hide behind as I prepared to unleash the storm. The videos, once a source of unimaginable pain, were now my weapons, and I wielded them with a precision that surprised even myself. The emails were crafted with care, each word a calculated strike meant to maximize the impact. To Ethan's family, to Lara's, to our friends who'd unknowingly been complicit in their secret, no one was spared. The send button was pressed not once, but several times, each click a step towards my liberation from the agony they'd cause. I imagined the fallout, the shock and horror that would ripple through our circle as the truth came to light. There would be no place for them to hide, no shadows deep enough to conceal the depth of their betrayal. Ethan and Lara, exposed for all to see, their perfect images shattered beyond repair. As the reality of what I'd done began to sink in, a twisted satisfaction took hold. It wasn't joy, far from it, but it was a start, a small flicker of power in the vast darkness they'd left me in. I waited, the silence of the early hours a stark contrast to the chaos I knew was unfolding in the digital realm. My phone remained silent, a testament to the anonymity of my revenge. Yet, I could almost hear the whispers, the shocked gasps, and the inevitable fallout. Ethan and Lara, once inseparable, would now be united in disgrace, their betrayal laid bare for all to see. This wasn't forgiveness, nor was it a path to healing. But in that moment, it was enough. Enough to give me a sense of control, a brief respite from the crushing weight of my shattered trust. As dawn broke, casting a soft light on the remnants of my old life, I knew that nothing would ever be the same. But maybe, just maybe, I could start to rebuild, piece by fragile piece, in the aftermath of the storm I'd unleashed. The silence of the morning after was deafening, each tick of the clock a heavy, echoing reminder of the storm I had unleashed. The night before, my fingers had danced across my phone with a single-minded purpose, sending those videos into the digital ether. It was a calculated move, cold and precise, aimed at exposing the betrayal that had torn my world apart. Now, as dawn broke, the reality of what I had done began to settle in, heavy and inescapable. My phone buzzed relentlessly, a constant barrage of messages and notifications. The digital world was ablaze with the scandal I had ignited. Ethan and Lara, once pillars of my life, were now the epicenter of a social earthquake, their reputations crumbling under the weight of their actions. I had envisioned this moment, played it over in my mind as a scene of triumphant justice. But as I scrolled through the messages, the expected surge of satisfaction eluded me. Instead, a hollow emptiness gnawed at my insides, a realization that no amount of revenge could undo the pain or fill the void left by their betrayal. The opportunity for confrontation came unexpectedly, at a gathering of mutual friends. The room was thick with tension, whispers darting through the air like arrows, each glance heavy with unspoken words. Ethan and Laura stood together, isolated, their eyes searching the room until they found mine. The moment was charged, a crackling anticipation of the inevitable clash. Ethan stepped forward, his face a mask of regret. "Mia, please, can we talk?" His voice was low, tinged with a desperation that might have once moved me. Laura stood by his side, her eyes downcast, a silent plea hanging between us. The words I had rehearsed for so long suddenly felt hollow. "There's nothing left to say," I responded, my voice steady but devoid of warmth. "You both made your choices, and now you have to live with them." The finality in my tone left no room for arguments or excuses. Turning my back on them, I walked away, leaving their apologies unacknowledged. It was a moment of closure, but not the kind I had imagined. There was no sense of victory, no triumphant exit. Just a deep, aching sadness for what had been lost. In the days that followed, the fallout from the public exposure was impossible to ignore. Ethan's friendships deteriorated, his social circle shrinking as the reality of his actions set in. Laura faced a similar fate, her once vibrant presence now a shadow, tainted by the choices she had made. As I watched from a distance, the consequences of my revenge unfolding, a bitter truth settled in my heart. The destruction of their social lives, the isolation they faced, it didn't bring me peace. Instead, it served as a constant reminder of the betrayal, a wound that refused to heal. In the quiet moments, when the noise of the world faded into the background, I was forced to confront the scars that the betrayal had left on my soul. Trust, once given so freely, now felt like a luxury I could no longer afford. The walls I had built around my heart were higher, stronger, a fortress to protect me from the pain of betrayal. The journey from love to betrayal, from betrayal to revenge, had brought me to this place, a place of reflection, where the cost of my actions lay bare before me. Despite the successful revenge, satisfaction remained an elusive shadow, a reminder that some wounds run too deep to be healed by retribution alone. In the end, the downfall of Ethan and Laura was not a story of victory. It was a tale of loss, a cautionary reminder of the fragility of trust and the price of vengeance. As I moved forward, the lessons of this chapter etched deep in my heart. I knew the road to healing would be long and uncertain. But it was a road I was ready to walk, one step at a time, in search of a peace that revenge could never bring. The morning light crept through the curtains, casting a soft glow across the room, illuminating a new chapter in my life. The past few months had been a whirlwind of emotions, a tumultuous journey through betrayal, pain, and ultimately, growth. As I sat at my desk, surrounded by textbooks and notes, I couldn't help but reflect on how far I'd come. My studies and part-time job had become my sanctuary, a place where I could lose myself in routine and responsibility, away from the chaos that had once consumed my life. Each day was a step forward, a testament to my resilience. I had learned to guard my heart, to see the red flags I had once so naively ignored. It was a cautious stance, one where I was constantly aware of the shadows of my past. Ethan's attempts to reach out had been a steady background noise, a reminder of the life I had left behind. His messages, filled with regret and pleas for forgiveness, went unanswered. It wasn't out of spite, but rather a necessary step towards healing. I had moved on, leaving him to grapple with the consequences of his actions. It was a chapter closed, a lesson learned. Lara's fate was a mirror to the consequences of betrayal. The vibrant, carefree friend I once knew had become a shadow of her former self, isolated by the very actions she thought she could hide. The backlash was swift, a social exile that left her grappling with guilt and loneliness. It pained me to see her fall so far, but it was a path she had chosen, a stark reminder of the fragile nature of trust. Despite the scars, the pain had carved a path to new beginnings. My world, once so narrowly focused on Ethan and Laura, had gradually expanded, welcoming new faces, new friendships. It was a cautious process, each new connection forged with a wisdom born from betrayal. Trust was no longer given freely, it was earned, a precious commodity that I guarded with vigilance. The final lesson, the silver lining in the stormy clouds of my past, was a profound understanding of my worth. Betrayal, while a bitter pill to swallow, had taught me the value of self-respect, the importance of setting boundaries, and the necessity of walking away from those who no longer served my best interests. It was a painful journey, but one that had ultimately led me to a place of strength and empowerment. As I turned my attention back to my studies, the noise of the world outside fading into a distant hum, I realized that the betrayal, though a defining moment, was no longer the anchor it had once been. It was a part of my story, but not the entirety of it. I had emerged from the darkness, not unscathed, but stronger, wiser, and more resilient. The road ahead was uncertain, filled with its own challenges and triumphs, but I faced it with a newfound confidence. The lessons of the past, while hard-earned, had equipped me with the tools to navigate the complexities of life with grace and determination. Betrayal had broken me, but in its wake, I had discovered an unshakable sense of self, a compass by which to steer my future. And so, with a deep breath, I embraced the day, ready for whatever lay ahead, secure in the knowledge that I was no longer the person I had once been. I was stronger, wiser, and infinitely more capable of facing the world on my own terms. The final lesson had been learned, and with it, a new chapter had begun. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more incredible tales of revenge. Don't forget to leave a comment below about what you would do in this situation. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next. Welcome back to our channel, where we explore the most intense and unexpected stories about relationships, family, and personal growth. Today, we have a tale that will leave you on the edge of your seat. Imagine waiting 4 long years for your girlfriend to return from studying abroad, only to have your world turned upside down in the most shocking way possible. This is the story of trust, betrayal, and the quest for truth. Join me as we dive into this gripping story titled, "I Caught My Girlfriend Cheating with Her Friend's Husband and Then She Dumped Me." The chill of December didn't stand a chance against the warmth buzzing through me as I waited at the airport on December 15, 2023. For years felt like a lifetime, but today, she was coming home. My girlfriend, the one who jetted off to study abroad, leaving a gaping hole in my daily life, was finally returning, even if just for the holidays. I couldn't help but bounce on my heels, a goofy grin plastered on my face, ignoring the curious glances from other bystanders. When she finally emerged, slightly tipsy from the flight's indulgences, our eyes locked, and it was like we were the only 2 people in the world. The drive home was surreal. She was here, in my car, her laughter filling the space between us, cutting through the years of distance. She queued up a playlist of our songs, and somewhere between the airport and our apartment, in a moment charged with reunion's raw energy, we reconnected in a way we hadn't in years. It was spontaneous, a bit reckless, but it felt like reclaiming a part of us lost in time. Walking into our apartment, I caught her glancing at her phone more often than I remembered. There was a slight shift, a sort of secrecy in the way she'd angle the screen away from me. But hey, after years of long distance, trust was our foundation. I shrugged it off, attributing it to her needing to catch up on messages from friends or perhaps jet-lagged, making her crave some personal space. The next day, we ventured out for brunch at our favorite spot, the one where we had our first date. It felt normal, comfortable, and right. We talked, laughed, and shared glances that said, "I've missed this." The physical connection was undeniable, a reminder of the chemistry that had first drawn us together. It felt like we were picking up right where we left off, no distance or time could dampen what we had. Yet, as days passed, her phone became a constant companion during our moments together. Movie nights ended with her on one end of the couch, me on the other, and her attention firmly locked on her screen. I noticed, sure, but never brought it up. Why stir trouble when everything else felt so right? December 22nd rolled around too quickly, and she was packing up to spend Christmas with her family abroad. She promised we'd stay in touch, FaceTime every day, and share in the holiday spirit, despite the miles. It sounded perfect, but the reality was different. Getting her on a call became a Herculean task, each attempt met with excuses about family outings or bad Wi-Fi. Concern crept in, whispering doubts I was quick to silence. We did manage to connect on Christmas Day, though, and for a while, it was like nothing had changed. We laughed, reminisced, and made plans for the future. Plans filled with hope and shared dreams. But as the call ended, and I was left in the silence of my apartment, the joy of the moment faded, leaving me with an unease I couldn't quite shake off. Was I just being paranoid, or was the distance between us more than just physical now? The trust that had once been unshakable now seemed to have developed hairline cracks, invisible but ever present. As I lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling, I couldn't help but wonder if the distance had changed us more than I'd realized, or if, maybe, I was just afraid of what the future held for us. The air was frosty when she returned on December 27th, but the chill inside wasn't from the weather. It was her, distant like she'd brought back a piece of the foreign winter in her heart. She was glued to her phone, her fingers swiping with purpose, her eyes rarely meeting mine. Even as I tried to close the gap between us on the couch, she'd subtly shift away, her phone always in hand. It was like she was physically there, but miles away in spirit. Then came December 30th, a day that started like any other but ended with my world turned upside down. "We need to talk," she said, the weight of those words hanging heavy between us. She talked about feeling neglected, about mistrust that seemed to come out of nowhere. I was blindsided, scrambling to find words, to understand where all this was coming from. "I just think it's best if we end things," she concluded, her voice steady, her decision seemingly final. Desperation kicked in. "We can work through this," I pleaded, my mind racing to offer solutions, changes, anything. "I can be better, more attentive, whatever you need." But her resolve was a fortress, my words, mere whispers against its walls. She had made up her mind, leaving me grappling with a reality I wasn't ready to accept. However, a sliver of hope emerged when we decided to give it another go on our city break planned for January 2nd. It was like a ceasefire, a brief respite from the turmoil. Those days were a mix of the familiar and the tentative, moments of intimacy intertwining with bursts of laughter. It felt like navigating a minefield blindfolded, exhilarating yet terrifying, not knowing if the next step would bring us closer or set everything ablaze again. By January 6th, as I drove her to the airport, the goodbye was filled with promises of effort and making it work. Yet, the unease lingered, a silent passenger on the ride back home. Her words said one thing, but the hesitation in her voice, the fleeting looks, told a different story. It was like watching a replay of our happiest moments, only this time, the colors were muted, the sounds a little off. The drive home was a blur, my thoughts a jumbled mess. The silence of the apartment was a stark contrast to the chaos in my mind. I replayed our conversations, searching for signs, for reasons why things felt so off. Was it me? Was it her? Was it the distance that had wedged itself between us, not just physically but emotionally? In that solitude, the realization hit hard. We were two people holding on to the ghost of what we used to be, scared to let go, yet hurting from holding on too tight. The promise to make it work was like a band-aid on a wound that needed stitches, temporary relief doomed to give way. I sank into the couch, her absence more palpable than ever. The room was filled with memories, with echoes of laughter and whispers of love, now overshadowed by the weight of unsaid words and unresolved feelings. The journey ahead was uncertain, a path shrouded in fog, with the only guarantee being that it wouldn't be easy. But as the night crept in, one thing was clear. This was a chapter of our lives closing, with the next page still unwritten, and the pen heavy in my hands. It was January 9th when my world got flipped, yet again. I think I've settled for less, she said, her words slicing through the air like a cold breeze. I need space, she added, as if the miles and oceans between us during her studies weren't space enough. There I was, tossed into the limbo of hopeful waiting, clinging to the thin thread of maybe, just maybe, things could turn around. Days turned into nights filled with restlessness. My mind, a relentless detective, couldn't shake off the gnawing suspicion. So, I turned to technology for answers. Find My iPhone became my ally. And there it was, her location pinging from the same friend's house over and over. Space? More like specific coordinates to where our relationship's trust was being questioned. I confronted her, my voice laced with a mix of hope and dread. So, this friend's place. You're there a lot, huh? Her response was quick, too rehearsed. Yeah, just hanging out, you know? It's nothing. But the seed of doubt was planted, watered by her evasion and nurtured by her half-hearted reassurances. The pressure built in a volcano on the brink. I needed clarity, a solid ground to stand on. We can't keep doing this dance, I told her. You need to decide what you want. It was a plea, a last-ditch effort to salvage the love I thought we had. But her resolve was ironclad, her words final. I just need to be alone, she said, and with that, she cut me off from Find My iPhone, severing the last thread of our digital connection. Then, out of the blue, she shared her Uber location with me. The destination? The same house. A cruel twist of fate or a slip-up, it didn't matter. It was a breadcrumb trail leading to the truth I wasn't sure I wanted to find. I confronted her again, my frustration boiling over. You keep ending up at this place. You're telling me there's nothing going on? Her denial came as swiftly as before, a well-rehearsed script, devoid of guilt. I've told you, it's not like that, she insisted, but the conviction was missing, her words hollow. The realization hit me like a freight train. The person I loved, trusted, and waited for was now a stranger, her actions and words weaving a web of deceit I could no longer ignore. The fabric of our relationship, once woven with threads of love and trust, was now frayed, torn by lies and secrets. As I sat alone, the silence of the room amplifying the chaos in my mind, I understood that this was more than just about her needing space or finding herself. It was about respect, honesty, and the painful truth that sometimes, love isn't enough to bridge the gap between two hearts drifting apart. The chapter of us, once vibrant and full of promise, was closing, leaving behind a trail of what-ifs and memories fading into the backdrop of a love story that lost its way. The moment we blocked each other on all social media, it felt like plunging into an ice-cold ocean, the shock of it leaving me gasping for air. There I was, floating in a vortex of anxiety, doubt, and the kind of betrayal that eats at you from the inside out. The silence from her end was deafening, a stark contrast to the chaos unfolding in my mind. It was in one of those long, sleepless nights that I stumbled upon something that turned my world upside down. Spotify, of all things, became the unexpected witness to her infidelity. Their playlists, a digital tapestry of songs, each one a thread in the story of her betrayal. It was like discovering a secret language, one that spelled out my worst fears in melodies and lyrics. Driven by a cocktail of hurt and desperation, I dialed her number, my heart pounding against my chest. The phone rang, each tone a step deeper into the abyss. Then, a click. Hello? Her voice, once my comfort, now a sharp reminder of our fractured reality. Is it true? I managed, my voice barely above a whisper. There was a pause, heavy and loaded, before she hung up, a brief but definitive confirmation of my suspicions. Minutes later, my phone buzzed. A text from her, apologizing for being rude, as if manners were the crux of our problems. I couldn't hold back. Tell me the truth, I texted back, my fingers trembling over the screen. And she did. There's someone else, she admitted, her words like a final nail in the coffin of our relationship. She spoke of love for this new man, citing the attention he lavished on her, attention I supposedly failed to provide. I sat there, phone in hand, a numbness spreading through me. The depth of her deceit was breathtaking. All those times she'd asked for presents, for tokens of my affection, she'd been nurturing another relationship behind my back. It wasn't just the infidelity, it was the calculated manipulation of my feelings, keeping me as a safety net while she explored new possibilities. The realization was a crushing blow. I'd been a pawn in her game, my love and commitment exploited for her selfish needs. The weight of this truth was suffocating, pressing down on me until I felt I could no longer breathe. I was left to grapple with the shattered pieces of what I thought was a partnership built on trust and mutual respect. As I reflected on her actions, the scale of her betrayal unfolded before me. It wasn't an impulsive mistake or a momentary lapse in judgment, it was a series of calculated decisions made at the expense of my trust and emotional well-being. The person I had loved and trusted for years had become a stranger, her actions alien and cruel. In the aftermath, I found myself spiraling, each day a battle against the tide of emotions threatening to pull me under. The pain of her betrayal, the humiliation of being deceived, and the realization of my own naivety converged into a storm of despair. But amidst the wreckage, a painful clarity began to emerge. I understood that this wasn't just about her infidelity or the end of our relationship, it was a harsh lesson in self-respect and the importance of recognizing one's worth. The road to recovery would be long and fraught with challenges, but it was a journey I had to undertake, not for her, but for myself. As I faced the daunting task of rebuilding my life, I knew that the scars of her deceit would always be a part of me. Yet, in that moment of profound loss, I also found a glimmer of hope. Hope that, with time, I could learn to trust again, to love again, and most importantly, to forgive, not for her sake, but for my own. Just when you think you've got it all figured out, life throws you a curveball that knocks you off your feet. That was me, the guy who thought he had the perfect relationship, until the day I stumbled upon the undeniable proof of her betrayal. It was like a gut punch, the kind that leaves you gasping for air, questioning every moment, every memory. The discovery was just the beginning, the catalyst for a descent I hadn't seen coming. I found myself caught in a whirlwind of emotions, swinging wildly between wanting to fix what we had and burning everything to the ground in search of revenge. It was a toxic mix, one that began to eat away at the fabric of my daily life. Work became an afterthought, a place I showed up to but wasn't really present. Deadlines slipped by unnoticed, and projects that once ignited my passion felt like burdens. I was unraveling, thread by thread, and the worst part? I didn't even care. My family and friends, they noticed. How could they not? I was a shell of the man I used to be, hollowed out by anger and pain. They reached out, hands extended with words of comfort and offers of escape. But I pushed them away, too consumed by my own sense of betrayal to accept their help. I've got this, I'd say, a lie I told myself more than anyone else. As the days turned into weeks, I became a detective in my own twisted drama, piecing together the timeline of her infidelity. Social media, once a place of shared photos and happy memories, became my hunting ground. Every like, every comment, a potential clue. Mutual friends, once sources of joy, were now interrogated, their words sifted for hints of deceit. My obsession knew no bounds. I confronted him, the other man, in a showdown that was more about my shattered ego than seeking any real answers. Words were exchanged, tempers flared, and for a moment, I teetered on the edge of violence, driven by a desire to reclaim some semblance of control. But this path, this need for vengeance, it led me down dark alleys I never intended to explore. Legal warnings soon followed, a stark reminder that my quest for justice was veering into dangerous territory. Privacy violations, they said, harassment claims, words that felt like handcuffs, restraining my every move. In a desperate bid for vindication, I turned to social media, airing our dirty laundry for the world to see. It was a mistake, a miscalculation driven by pain. Instead of rallying allies, I found myself more isolated, caught in the crossfire of divided loyalties. Friends I'd known for years chose sides, leaving me adrift in a sea of judgment and whispered conversations. Work, my once secure haven, became a battleground. My performance, hampered by sleepless nights and days spent in the grip of obsession, plummeted. Warnings turned into stern conversations, and eventually, the demotion came. It was a blow, not just to my career but to my identity, a confirmation of the failure I felt etched into every aspect of my life. I was lost, adrift in a storm of my own making, unable to see the shore. The man I once was, confident, driven, happy, seemed like a stranger, a distant memory overshadowed by the wreckage of the present. The pursuit of truth, of some semblance of justice, had cost me more than I ever imagined, leaving me to wonder if any of it was worth the price. In the thick of a storm you've whipped up yourself, there's a desperate kind of clarity that comes with knowing you've got nothing left to lose. That was me, gearing up for one last stand, a final showdown that I hoped would bring me some semblance of closure. I was gunning for remorse, maybe a sliver of guilt, or at the very least, an explanation that made sense of the chaos she'd left in her wake. We met in the very cafe where our story began, the irony of the setting not lost on me. There she was, the same, yet unrecognizably different, her indifference a stark contrast to the turmoil churning inside me. As I laid bare my pain, seeking some acknowledgement of the wreckage, her responses were cold, calculated. The finality in her voice, the way she spoke of her new life without a hint of regret, it was a clear message. I was a chapter firmly closed. The aftermath was brutal. My attempts at reaching out, at salvaging what dignity I had left, were met with legal threats, her words slicing through any hope of reconciliation. It was a wake-up call, a bitter realization that the battleground I was on was one where I stood utterly alone. Then came the wedding of a mutual friend, an event that should have been a celebration but instead felt like walking into the lion's den. There they were, the perfect couple, while whispers of my downfall circulated like fine wine. My presence was a reminder of a scandal, my every move watched, analyzed, and judged. It was in that moment, surrounded by faces I once considered friends, that I truly understood the depth of my isolation. In the months that followed, I tried to move on, to find solace in new beginnings. But each attempt was a glaring reminder of the past, my unresolved feelings acting as a barrier I couldn't breach. The shadow of public outbursts and whispered accusations followed me, a stigma I couldn't shake. The final nail in the coffin was a letter from her, an impersonal epitaph to what we once had. Her words were sharp, a clinical dissection of our relationship, each sentence reinforcing her decision as one made in pursuit of her happiness. It was a cold, calculated goodbye, one that left no room for doubt or hope. I was left reeling, a ship adrift in a sea of my own making. The realization that I had lost not just the woman I loved but everything that defined me was crushing. My dignity, my friends, even my sense of purpose, all casualties of a war I'd waged on myself. Professionally, I was a ghost, my once promising career a casualty of my inability to separate personal turmoil from my work. The day I lost my job was just another chapter in the tragic saga I'd authored, a tangible reminder of how far I'd fallen. Sitting amidst the ruins of what my life had become, I couldn't help but reflect on the journey that had led me here. It was a stark landscape, one where every choice, every action had contributed to my undoing. The pursuit of closure, of understanding, had cost me everything, leaving me to navigate the wreckage of a life I scarcely recognize. In the aftermath of heartbreak and betrayal, I found myself adrift in a sea of confusion and sorrow. The life I knew, the love I cherished, was gone, leaving behind a void that seemed impossible to fill. It was during these darkest hours that I stumbled upon an online forum, a haven for souls shattered by deceit. Reading through the stories of others, I felt a kinship in our shared pain, a flicker of hope in the solidarity of our experiences. Compelled by this newfound community, I took the brave step of seeking therapy. Sitting in that small, dimly lit room, I poured out my heart to a stranger. It was a daunting task, unraveling the layers of trust, betrayal, and the raw wounds of my public breakdown. Yet, with each session, I felt a weight lifting, a clarity emerging from the fog of my despair. It was during this period of self-reflection and healing that fate threw a curveball my way, a chance encounter with a woman who sparked something in me I thought was lost forever. Her laughter, her empathy, it offered a glimpse of what could be. But the specter of my past loomed large, the scars of betrayal too fresh, sabotaging what little hope we might have had for something more. The realization that I needed a fresh start was sudden but undeniable. I decided to move to a new city, to leave behind the ghosts of my past relationship and the failures that haunted me. Packing up my life was a bittersweet journey through memory lane, each photo, each memento a reminder of better times, tinged with regret and what-ifs. Arriving in my new city, I was met with the harsh reality that escaping my past was not as simple as changing my address. Despite the physical distance, the reach of social media and the whispers of mutual connections ensured that my reputation had followed me. The shadow of my former life cast a long, dark silhouette over my attempts to start anew. The offer of a new job provided a much-needed distraction, a chance to rebuild my professional life and, perhaps, my sense of self. Yet, connecting with my new colleagues proved challenging. The fear of repeating past mistakes, of opening up only to be hurt again, kept me at arm's length, trapped in a self-imposed exile. In search of an outlet, a way to process my journey and perhaps help others navigating their own paths through heartbreak, I started a blog. Writing anonymously, I shared my story, my mistakes, my lessons learned. The act of putting words to my pain, to my growth, became a therapeutic endeavor, a way to make sense of the chaos that had once threatened to consume me. Now, as I stand looking out over the skyline of my new city, I'm struck by the duality of my circumstances. Yes, I've managed to put physical distance between myself and the reminders of my past, but the emotional scars remain, a testament to the cost of love and betrayal. It's a sobering realization, one that comes with its own form of peace. For in acknowledging the scars, and accepting the pain and the lessons it has taught me, I find myself ready to face whatever comes next, armed with a deeper understanding of myself and a cautious hope for the future. The journey has been long, fraught with setbacks and moments of despair, but also marked by growth and unexpected moments of grace. As the sun sets on this chapter of my life, I'm reminded that while the past may shape us, it does not define us. The true measure of our strength lies in our ability to rise from the ashes of our darkest days, to forge ahead with resilience, and to open our hearts once more, despite knowing the risks. This is the true cost of love and betrayal, but also the undeniable value of hope and redemption. Thank you for watching. If this story resonated with you, please give this video a thumbs up and share your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss an update on our latest stories. Until next time, stay strong and welcome back to the channel, everyone. I'm thrilled to have you here for another captivating tale that will tug at your heartstrings and keep you on the edge of your seat. Today's story is one of love, betrayal, and the quest for self-discovery. It's titled Caught Cheating, Husband Hires Private Investigator, Shocking Footage Revealed. Get ready to experience a tale of trust shattered and the pursuit of truth as we uncover the secrets that threaten to tear a marriage apart. Tell something was up, but I didn't press. She said she was tired. So I went with it over the next few days. I started noticing that she was on her phone quite a bit, even around dinner time. I would ask, why is she texting a lot these days? And she would tell me that she was in a group chat, talking with her girlfriends about the girls' night out they had and planning another one. I didn't think much of it at the time. She was constantly texting her girlfriends. It was nothing new, but looking back now, I realized she was probably planning something with them that she didn't want me to know about. My wife works as a consultant for a big firm and would always come home stressed. So I didn't mind her having a night out with her girlfriends every so often. But now she is talking about another girls' night out. This will be the second girls' night out coming up in less than 3 weeks. The bad thing is, these women she hangs out with, 4 of them are all single. She is the only married one of the bunch, which in my opinion is not a good thing because it means she is the only one with something to lose. The other women are footloose and fancy-free. I don't want my wife to be a cheater, but I also don't want to control her or tell her what she can and cannot do. So, her second girls' night out came and went. I told her the next day that she needed to be careful and make sure her single friends didn't cause her to fuck up her marriage. She looked at me funny, but didn't say anything. After work one day, I stopped by my parents' house and talked to them about my frustration with my wife participating in these frequent girls' night out parties. I told my mom that the women she hangs out with are all single and none of them have anything to lose. My mom looked at me and said, "Well, I don't see anything wrong with a girls' night out, but I do see a problem with a girls' night out with only single women." My mom said she is playing with fire. Then my dad chimed in and said, "Yeah, if I were you, I would put my foot down and tell her that's enough." He also said the fact that she keeps going out to party without you is a major cause for concern. Then my mom jumped in again and said she did a girls' night out with her friends. 3 times in the 40 years, my parents have been married, but my mom's girlfriends were all married. Mom said they were home by 11 p.m. They didn't stay out later than that. I thought about what they said on my way home and I decided they were right. I needed to nip this in the bud before it got out of hand. When I got home, I talked to my wife about it and she got angry saying I was being controlling and didn't trust her. I tried to explain that I wasn't trying to control her. I just wanted her to be careful because I loved her. She didn't want to hear it and went to bed angry. The next day she left for her girls' night out. She didn't even come home from work. This was her 3rd girls' night out. I did not even know about this one. My wife didn't get home until after 2 in the morning. I didn't say anything. I just waited up for her. I pretended to be asleep. When she entered the bedroom, I decided I needed to find out what was going on and why she wanted to leave her family and party with her girlfriends on the way to work the next day. I called a friend of mine and asked him, did he still have the contact information for the private investigator he used for his company? A little backstory. My friend had an employee who was trying to get workman's comp for having an accident on the job. His employee was complaining after the accident that he couldn't come to work. So my friend promptly hired a private investigator. Turns out he wasn't injured at all. He was playing golf, played in a flag football league. Needless to say, he dropped the workman's comp claim. My friend gave me the number of the private investigator he used. He then asked me, was everything okay? I told him I wasn't sure. And I indicated that I think my wife is doing something she wasn't supposed to be doing. I said, she has been going out and doing these so-called girls' night out parties. My friend then asked me what made me think my wife was cheating. I told him about the 3 times she had gone out recently and stayed out until after midnight, coming home, smelling of alcohol. I also told him that when I confronted her about it, she got angry and defensive. He then said to me, well, it sounds like you have enough. I called the private investigator and set up an appointment to meet him after work. I met the private investigator and he asked me what I wanted him to do. I told him I wanted him to follow my wife and see what she was doing when she went out on her so-called girls' night out. The private investigator told me his fee was $100 per hour. And I said, I didn't care. I just wanted to know what my wife was doing. I gave the private investigator a picture of my wife. I told him what kind of car she drove, where she worked and what hours she worked. The private investigator told me he would start following my wife the next day. I waited impatiently for the private investigator to call me and tell me what my wife was doing. Finally, after 3 days, he called me. The private investigator told me to meet him after work. He had some footage to show me. He showed me footage of my wife leaving work in different clothes that day. On that day, she didn't leave for work in those clothes. She changed at work. He followed her to a bar. He went in and noticed she went to a table with a bunch of women, which were her girlfriends. They were there for about 2 hours. Then they all left. He followed them to a house about 15 minutes from the bar. He noticed a guy answered the door and they all went in. The private investigator was dressed in black. He tells me that at night, it helps him get closer for his surveillance. He walked up to a window at a slight distance and noticed all the girls were dancing, grinding on a few guys. And my wife was in the corner with some guy. He was squeezing her butt and she was kissing him. After that, he looked at me and told me, I think you have enough to do what you need to do. He handed me this flash drive and he told me he will keep a copy just as a precaution. After meeting with the private investigator, I went home and cried. I couldn't believe my wife of 9 years had cheated on me and she was still doing it. I wanted to confront her, but I didn't want to show her the footage. The next day I got up and left for work without saying anything to my wife. She sent me a text on the way to work, asking why I didn't say anything to her. When I left, I did not respond to the text. When I got to work, I made it a point to call a few divorce lawyers to see what I was dealing with and how I could protect myself. I also started looking for a place to stay because I knew there was no way I could stay in the house with my wife. I will miss the boys, but their mother did this. I was absolutely devastated. My whole world had been turned upside down and I didn't know how to fix it. The only solution was divorce. I wasn't going to try and fix our marriage. She wants this single life. She can have it. I had to be strategic because I didn't want the boys to be alone while their mother went out on her girls' night out. I live in Massachusetts, which is a no-fault state, that much I know. So divorce should be pretty easy. When I got home that night, my wife was home sitting on the couch with the boys. I walked in and she asked how my day was. And the boys smiled at me and said, "Hey Dad," I wanted to cry, but I had to hold it in. A few hours go by and everyone is winding down. My wife puts the boys to bed and comes downstairs and asks me if I want to watch a movie with her. I said, "No, I don't think so." She then said, "Okay, I'm going to bed." I waited until she was in bed to go upstairs and get my stuff and leave. I waited until she fell asleep before I left the house. I didn't have anywhere to go yet. So I went to my parents'. It was late. My dad was worried and asked me, was I okay? I told him I had something to show him. We sat down at the dining room table. I pulled up the footage that my private investigator compiled and showed my dad what the private investigator found. And my dad was in disbelief. My mom came downstairs and I showed her too. They were both speechless. I told them I was moving out and getting a divorce. They didn't say anything to try and stop me. I'm sure they were disappointed, but what could they say? My wife had cheated on me and I was done. I stayed at my parents' house that night. The next morning I got up, I sent my boss a text and told him that I would be coming in late. I was honest with him and he didn't have a problem with it. After talking to my boss, I noticed my wife had sent me hundreds of text messages, wondering where I was and why I left last night. I didn't respond to any of them. I found an attorney and filed for divorce based on the grounds of adultery. And I moved out of the house. I went back to the house when I knew my wife wouldn't be there. And I left a note on the kitchen counter. I told her that I had filed for divorce and that she could find me at my parents' house if she needed anything. After work, I drove to my parents' house and I saw my wife's car parked in the driveway. I went inside and I saw my wife sitting at the kitchen table crying. She asked me why I filed for divorce and I slowly pulled out my phone and showed her the footage and told her that I did not deserve this. I didn't deserve the way you were treating me. We sat and talked for a while and we both decided it would be best if we divorced. I told her I didn't want the house. We were renting it anyway, so she could have it. She makes enough money to pay for it. At the divorce hearing, it was amicable. The judge gave me 30 days to get the rest of my things. I didn't go after her for alimony. I made more than her and I didn't have to pay child support. She was getting that from the kid's father already. We are both the same age, 33, and the boys are 7 and 8. It was heartbreaking because I loved those boys like they were my own and I was their father in every way, but biologically. My job offered me a position out of state and I took it, changed my phone number. Only my parents and a few friends have my new number and started a new life. It's been almost a year now and I'm doing well. I've started dating again and I'm in a much better place emotionally. My friends have told me that my ex-wife was asking about me and she even tried to reach out to me on social media. But I have no desire to speak to her or see her again. I'm glad I made the decision to move on with my life. And I hope you can do the same if you're in a similar situation. Thanks for reading. I have never shared anything about my life on these forums, but this was heartbreaking for me. I still struggle at times, but one day at a time is how I am dealing with it. If you enjoyed this story, please show your support by hitting the like button. Your engagement means the world to me and helps keep the stories coming. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you never miss out on future tales filled with unexpected twists and turns. Subscribing not only keeps you in the loop but also supports me in my quest to bring you more captivating stories. So, take a moment to like and subscribe. Thank you again for your support and stay tuned for more incredible journeys. Until next time, keep believing in the power of stories to transform and